What's up, everybody? Today, joining me on Challenge Mania. I have to be very clear to call it Challenge Mania because if I called it Traitor Mania, the podcast that my wife Lindsay and I did all season of the Traitors, I would officially have lied to her when I told her, sweetie, the reason that you have to watch the kids while I interview Trishelle is because it's for Challenge Mania, not for Traitors Mania. Or Traitor Mania. So here today, joining us on Challenge Mania, but mainly to talk about the Traitors, which she just won, representing MTV, the logo she still has behind her pretty little face, Trishelle Cannatella. How are you?
Hey, Scott, how are you?
I am so flattered that this is, I believe, the only podcast appearance you're doing. I'm just kidding. My goal today, and I'm sure a lot of people have listened to the thousands of interviews you've done over the past week or so, is to try to make this as different as possible, to try to unpack this whole experience for you in different ways, because you
Yeah.
have been out there. You had the reunion, you did Watch What Happens Live, you've done every podcast under the sun. I'm flattered. I believe today is the first time you're wearing a sweater for an interview. So I will
Yeah.
say that. There we go. Ballroom gowns are in the closet, and we are back in early spring wardrobe here. But first of all, congrats.
Thank you. Thank
Not
you so
just
much.
on winning, but like just an amazing season. So validating for people like me who know that you are like a student of these kinds of games.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of want to start there. I just thought, why do you think they selected you for this show? Because I don't necessarily know or think it's for the reasons that made you win this show.
I think that they selected me because they thought that I would not be intimidated by the housewives. I kind of pop off sometimes, and I think that they were thinking that I would be a little bit vocal at the round table, which I was. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know.
See, I think it's because okay, they put together this, like, for lack of a better way of putting it, celebrity reality all-star cast, right? There were a couple outlier decisions, Deontay Wilder, the boxer, and John, the famous councilman from the UK. But for the most part, I felt like they were going for the biggest names in the worlds of Survivor, Big Brother, in your case, MTV. Not necessarily the challenge, because, like, CT and Johnny obviously have the most challenge wins. You're not
Yeah.
necessarily known for your challenge prowess, but I always talk about you as like being this original MTV icon, your season of the Real World being sort of this apex of MTV popularity that then for you parlayed into Surreal Life and all these other shows. And so for me, I feel like they cast you based on you being this, like, sort of, before Housewives even existed, sort of the version of that level of celebrity in the MTV Real World family. Meanwhile, the poker player in you, the student of the game when it comes to Big Brothers and all these other cerebral reality shows, that's why they should have cast you. Whether it is or isn't, I think that is why you ended up winning this game.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I think probably the demographic of the traders is older than the challenge, because look at the people they have on there, like Deontay, and then like you mentioned, John and Housewives. It is an older demographic, so I think that, like myself, I don't know a lot of the young people that are popular on the challenge anymore.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't think
So
anybody does, to be honest with you. And
I
what's
hear that
great,
a lot.
well, what's so funny about this show, and I want to ask you, like, how this felt for you, as far as, like, because obviously you had your first Real World wave, you've had several other waves with other shows, but like in this sort of social media age, for you it was obviously coming back for All Stars, and then this, which, like, for me, Peacock in one way is a streamer, it's not quintessential network, but I feel like this show, just based on like the way when I would like tweet about it or whatever, the reaction I would get, I feel like it really hit for a variety of reasons. And it hit at a time where on MTV, the challenge season that was airing was a bunch of newbies, a bunch of people who had only played 1, 2, 3 seasons. And a lot of people were out on that. So here comes this show, it valiantly in shining armor with 3 quintessential MTV faces and these other fun names from reality worlds. And it just gets down to brass tacks. And it's sort of like, without All Stars on, kind of gave us that nostalgic feel when everyone was really craving it.
Thank you. I agree. I think that this should show the people who cast the challenges a little bit of what people want to see. People want to see the older generation, the old school generation of the shows, the people who did the Real World, the people who did Road Rules, these shows that were, around whenever we were growing up. People want to see that, even the young people. And so I don't understand why they keep misstepping with putting these people that nobody cares about on the show. It's so weird. I don't get it. Like, I guess it's just to the point where they gave up and they're just like, let's just get people who have a bunch of Twitter or a bunch of Instagram followers or TikTok followers on here. They're going to do fake fights, which insults the audience's intelligence because everybody knows what's happening. The fake social media fights that get these people cast on the show, but no one cares. No one's invested. No one wants to watch it. And I see it time and time again. Like every time people are talking about the challenge, they're saying how disappointing it is. And
Well,
so
what's
sad.
interesting, you mentioned like Instagram followers. I almost think they don't even shoot for people who have too many Instagram followers because then they're like too hard to get. They're like, I make
Yeah.
25 grand every time I shave on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
So like to me, I feel like what has kind of gotten the challenge, Survivor, these other shows with these ulterior motives of sticking around for 40, 50 seasons, keeping their budgets intact. What's sort of keeping them in a box is that like, and for instance, I do know that they know exactly what you just said because without saying too much, they're filming season 40 right now, and they went back to that well. They know that for season 40 of the challenge, they have to deliver, maybe not necessarily with the Trishelles, but with a lot of names that were around when you were. And so did Survivor. When Survivor did season 40, they had this winners only season. But I think the reason from 41 to 46 on Survivor or for 39 on the challenge, they do have to kind of keep everybody in line is that for whatever reason, they're in the Stone Age when it comes to reality shows. And as far as keeping the challenge, the logo, the Survivor logo as the star, keeping the cast members as sort of, lesser than. Meanwhile, the Traitors swoops in, House of Villains swoops in. There's other shows, these copycat shows, Snake in the Grass, things like that. These all-star reality shows that I think are kind of the future of the genre. And I want to ask you your opinion on that because for me, the theory is twofold. One, they deliver for us as viewers. Two, they cut out a lot of the bullshit that for when they started reality, I get that John Murray probably said, hey, look, I come from documentary. We got to shoot 24 hours a day. Oh, they have to live together. Oh, they can't have access to this or that. Oh, we can't tell them where we're going. And for the first 20 or 30 years, that might have been true. But nowadays, I think we just watched a show called The Traitors. I won't even ask you specifics, but like spoiler alert, a lot of the stuff we're seeing is kind of shot for fun and this and that. A lot of it's kind of filmed like a movie. And as a viewer, I don't even know the difference. And they treat you guys like stars, I'd imagine. I want to ask your opinion on that because I think that a show like The Challenge, that when they film it to this day, even with the Trishelles of the world, all-stars, you could tell me about your all-star season 1 experience. They might be a little nicer to you, but they're still taking your phone. They're not telling you where you're going. They're being secretive. They're, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. What was this experience like? Because for me, just watching from afar, everything from them announcing the cast the day you guys left, they just like took that from the spoiler accounts. They were just like, hey, we're going to have Alan Cumming read this off on Twitter before you guys even started filming, right? That right there. Did that ruin the show for anyone? No. I watched the finale. I had no idea who won. Didn't matter that they announced the cast on day one.
Right.
You guys, I'd imagine you probably had a heads up of what country you were going to beforehand, things like that. You were treated well, so tell me about the experience of doing a show like The Challenge, doing Real World, obviously when you were young and impressionable, and now doing one of these like, celebrity reality all-star shows that I would imagine handles it a completely different way. Is it night and day?
Okay, so first off, I want to get back to like the difference between like John Murray back in the day and filming 24/7. So we obviously in the castle did not do that. We were filming, we had a schedule kind of. I mean, we didn't know what time we would be finishing at night, and they didn't know either. But we knew what time we were waking up the next day. We had a call sheet because we're professionals and we're adults. We had a call sheet. Yes. I mean, that's what they should do. Treat people with respect. They will give you what you want. And so that's what the challenge is missing. They are so old school. They think that if you film someone, like you said, 24/7, people are too savvy for that. Even your basic 21-year-old who came from Europe or whoever the hell, these randos that they cast now, people are too smart for that. They're not going to pop off like all the time. And if they do, it's very calculated. They know what people want. But if back in the day, like my day and CT and Bananas and all these people in Anissa, you actually had to be interesting to get on television. Like you sent in a VHS tape of you and you're like, they get 50,000, 100,000 tapes and they're like, oh, we're going to pick 6. You had to be special. Nowadays, everybody's on TV. They'll just throw anybody and they're not special. And so I don't know. I just think that if you have someone who is a good personality, whether you film them 24/7 or 12 hours a day, they're going to bring it for television. And for me personally, I work better sleeping in my own bed. If you take my phone away, and we did get our phones taken away, and I'll tell you that in a second. But if you take away everything from me, you strip me of like a bed that I could sleep in by myself, like good sleep at night, food that I want to eat, whatever. You strip me from everything, I'm not going to be in a good mood for you. I will not give you what you want. I'm going to nap during the day. I'm going to be pissed off. I'm not going to be easy to deal with. And they don't understand that that's where people are right now in life. You don't need to do all these things to piss people off.
Well, some of these people you're playing with, I mean, I forget exactly their specifics. I'm not like the biggest Bravo watcher, but like some of these people were initially cast for their first show because they're like married to a billionaire or they own this company, this and that. It's kind of hard to sell them on these like dire conditions to win $200,000 or whatever the appearance fee is. You got to be in it for the fun of it. And if you take away the fun of it by adding a prison element. Now, the thing you're saying about the phones, here's what I'll say. There is a gamesmanship element to the Traitors that A, I'm fascinated by, and B, I'm glad remains at least mainly intact for what I could tell. And that's part of the like, yeah, you guys not having your phones, like obviously, yeah, it would be terrible if anything was communicated between you guys that wasn't filmed and things like that. Exactly. That being said, it shouldn't matter if you're watching Netflix or something during that time, or if you're, in the hot tub or whatever you could be doing by yourself, whatever. But I get controlling when you guys are together or communicating with each other. That feels probably a little different. Compare to me the difference in having your phone taken for a show like this, where you kind of understand the functionality of it, and not necessarily the phone thing, but the types of things they do like to you, and like controlling the experience on the challenge, that at this point you're like, well, that isn't necessary anymore.
It's not necessary. Like, okay, so yes, they take your phones away, and I completely understand why. And I did have someone from production sit on the bed near me while I called my husband 10 minutes a week, which is, I think, kind of like what they do in the challenge. It's like 10 minutes a week, or if people have children, they get a little bit more time. I don't mind that. I don't have children. I respect a lot whenever people leave for television and they have family behind. And I think that they do deserve more time. I would give them my 10 minutes. So I get that. But I just think that the fact that I was able to have like a noise machine, and we didn't get Netflix or anything because they were afraid.
Oh, you didn't?
No, they were afraid that people would get on the internet. And so they kind of cut that aspect of it. They don't want people like communicating without them. It would compromise the game, basically.
Right.
If you were having
so anything you guys could turn into the internet or use to get even one-way communication from the internet.
Exactly. Right. So if my husband became friends with Janelle's husband off camera and they were giving game info back and forth, that would ruin the game. So they didn't do any of that. But I was able to watch like a million episodes of Big Bang Theory or whatever's on cable TV at the time, and the news. And so, yeah, it was fine.
And how long, for instance, was filming?
It was almost 4 weeks for me. So it was pretty short. So that was from start to finish.
And like, to me, and obviously they get very creative with when they cliffhang certain things. And there were certain episodes where they, cut it off right before you hear who's going to get, exiled or whatever the term is, and things like that. So obviously they probably know, hey, we want 12 episodes or whatever. It ended up being 11, 12. And they kind of are able to sparse it out. But like, again, to me, these shows that take 3 months to film, right? I wonder, it's like, is that unnecessary too? Like, all this stuff to me is like Stone Age thinking that, like, again, if it matters to the viewers, and sometimes it does, like there are viewers who are a little annoyed that Survivor went from a 39-day schedule to a 26-day schedule, because to them, watching at home thinking, could I do this for 39 days is a different scenario than could I do this for 26 days. Reading somebody's face when they're crying or sad that they missed their family is different between 20 and 30 days. And so I kind of get in that specific instance. But I'll tell you right now that like this show, you can't tell how long it took you guys to film this.
Right.
And part of the brilliance of that is, being a little bit of an industry person myself, I could tell they shoot a lot of what we call in the biz B-roll, a lot of shots of you guys, getting out of bed, maybe reading in bed, maybe pondering by a teddy bear. And I forget whose instance that was. Maybe that was Bergie. Yeah. Like, all this stuff. And maybe walking through the halls and this and that. And they use that to fill the moments where in reality, they can't have Alan walking down the hall deciding who to put a thing under your door. Because if you guys actually lived in a house, you'd be listening to your door saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
who did he just go?" Things like that. So I totally get why functionally that stuff can be. That's a time saver. But then once you've shot all that stuff, you can still fill the episode with it to where we get 12 episodes organically in 4 weeks' time. So to me, it's like, I haven't heard one person complain about any of this stuff. Like, yes, sure, we watch this stuff with a keen eye and we try to figure out, like, ooh, what are they doing this way or that way? But not with like an annoying, like, well, that's unfair. Just because I'm fascinated by what is this show improving on and doing better to where almost everyone who did the show had this great experience. Whereas people come home from the challenge and like the first call is like to a therapist or to a
Yeah,
friend
they're like,
who
never
might have
again.
one. Yeah, yeah,
Right. And
exactly.
then they're telling everyone how awful it is. And honestly, all the CBS and Big Brother people that have been talking to, I've met a lot of friends from doing the Traitors, have all been like, everyone's telling us that don't ever do a challenge because they don't pay and they don't give you, and they make it miserable for you. So you're not getting good personalities anymore. I really don't understand. And you know what? Maybe it's because all the good people left, Murray. I don't know. But there have been people that I've known forever that got promoted, and I don't understand where the disconnect is. And I think maybe they're more focused on other shows, and the challenge is just sort of, they think, sustaining and kind of just staying above water. But it's kind of embarrassing. I don't want to be part of this franchise that is sinking so low, and like they're not keeping up with everyone else. Like,
Well,
yeah.
you're now as good of an ad for that franchise, the Real World MTV. You literally, for those of you guys now watching this, if you want to watch this or any of our podcasts, go to challengemaniacs.com, join the pod squad. You can get video versions of all of our podcasts. Trishelle literally has an MTV logo behind her.
I
And
love
that's
MTV.
sort of like what you were for this season, in my opinion. You, CT, not even just winning, but even just presenting yourselves well, playing well, especially during those challenges, being the only two people who were worth a nickel, let alone 50 grand a challenge. We'll talk about the challenges a little later, but like, for me, you guys were such a great, I watched people comment like, oh, I started watching the challenge because of Trishelle or CT and liking him on this show. I'm sure there's people who have started watching Housewives because of Phaedra and vice versa.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure, and I'm not positive, but Corey was pretty outspoken when you guys got cast and became clear that you, Johnny, and CT would be on this season. Corey Wharton came out and said, that's unfair. When there was Traitors season 1, I asked if I could do it, and MTV shot it down. They waved my contract in my face. They said, you can't do it. Now, granted, season 1 is more of a proof of concept here in the States, at least. Maybe they don't know what's the caliber of reality star doing it. Is this good for us? Who knows? But I do have it on good authority that for Challenge Season 40, when they got that contract, they tightened the exclusivity rules. They're trying to rein them more in on what they can do, at least without their
They'll
permission.
never tighten it for Johnny Bananas.
Well, that's the thing.
He
So
has a non-exclusivity.
right. So Johnny,
and they
that
would
goes back.
never tighten it for me. They can't afford me, number one. Number two, they would never do that because I would never agree to it.
So with Johnny, it goes back to the first look thing, right? When Johnny gets his first show, they want to give him the keys to a late night show on NBC, right? The top 4 network on television after Saturday Night Live, and they want to let him travel the country. To me, that's a no-brainer for them to have, whether they have the right to or not. Instant yes. You are now validating our entire platform by getting offered this. But instead it was no. They tried to say, no, you can't do that. He obviously worked out whatever he needed to do to get that show. But then ever since then, he's had it flat out in his contract. He can do whatever he wants. I assume CT does as well. I don't even know if it mattered for you because I know it had been a couple of years since you had done an MTV related project. But for me, I just think that's more Stone Age thinking by them. They need to think of these as great opportunities for, like, now Peacock is advertising for the challenge by having you guys on the show.
Yeah. Can I ask you something? And I swear to God, this is no shade. Who's Corey Wharton? Was he actually asked to do the Traitors?
Well, so you got to remember.
Because I don't believe he was.
No, but here's why I do, because he's a huge Teen Mom star too. So yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
So Corey was on Real World Skeletons, has done probably 9 or 10 challenges. He also has 2, I believe, at least one. There's one kid, I believe, with Cheyenne, who briefly did the challenge, and I believe Are You the One? And they've been on 3 to 5 or even more seasons of Teen Mom. They've had their own Teen Mom season and special and whatnot. And so his contract with them is probably even more ironclad than the average challenger.
I know him from Teen Mom, not the challenge.
Yes. There you
Yeah.
go. So
Okay.
so Corey
So I understand that
and
now.
let me just say that that's probably why Traitors wanted him, is because he, his fandom and his fame supersedes the challenge now. If you go count
Yeah.
Instagram followers of the challengers, his is exponentially larger, and it's all because of that Teen Mom following. But
Yeah.
you got to remember that was season one. So season one of Traitors, obviously, you look, they had Cody Calafiore, they had Cirie, but like they ended up going with this theme of half regular folks, half reality cast members. That might have not been the goal the whole time. Like it might have been that, hey, we can't get 12 people the caliber of Cirie, so why don't we make sure that people don't think that we downgraded and we just kind of do it that way. So I definitely, I don't think he would have gone out on that limb and kind of thrown them under the bus if it wasn't true. So I'm pretty sure he was definitely asked. That being said, season 2 rolls around. They're no longer going back to him. Now they're shooting a little higher. They're going to Johnny. They're going to you. They're going to CT. And to me, like I would just love to know, like in this world now where there's such a thing as a like sort of all-star reality show, and this isn't the only one. I think it's the best one because I think the game is the most fine-tuned. Like House of Villains to me is a cool concept. The game is kind of silly. It kind of reminds me more of Surreal Life than a Traitors, right? Like, and people
He's
ask me,
cute.
he's very cute, right? Kind of got a Drake vibe to him. No, he's a very popular guy.
He's
People love
really
him.
cute.
Yeah,
Yeah, he has a ton of followers. Okay, yeah, I get
yeah,
it now.
yeah.
I
So
just I don't know him from the challenge, but yeah, Teen
what do
Mom.
you think about the new landscape? Because to me, I think this is because the challenge has kind of they're kind of on the challenge's corner in that the challenge was sort of the show that first did this, in that they branched off, and instead of just taking, look, it started as the Real World Road Rules Challenge because it was just that, people from Real World and Road Rules. But
Mhm.
then they go, well, what if we took people from Are You the One? Would people care? What if we just took people who had never been on Fresh Meat? Would people care? And then they started pulling and prodding, and now all of a sudden it's Big Brother, now it's Survivor, now it's they took someone from they've taken pro wrestlers, they've taken people from America's Got Talent. So they kind of were the first show to do this. So I can't imagine how hypocritical you think it is, because even I think it is the most hypocritical thing in the world to try to tell their talent that they can't go and do other shows.
Yeah, of course I think it's hypocritical and it's really messed up, and I think that people should be fighting it more. Why aren't they? Like here's the thing. They asked me to do 40 and I was offended by the pay.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sorry, but not everybody deserves the same amount. I have said this a million times. There are some people that bring it more than others. Um, I am firm with that. You cannot get me you are not going to pay me the same that you're going to pay some of these other girls that do absolutely nothing and bring nothing to the table. I've fought with someone on every show that I've done. And if I'm there a week, something happens. I mean, that's what it is. And if you pay me more, I'm going to bring it more and I'm going to be happier and I'm going to want to stay longer. But yeah, and also just it's kind of messed up. I wonder if they pay these other people from Big Brother and stuff and Survivor more.
No, it's less actually. So okay.
Then why would
So
they ever want to do the show? It's
because
miserable.
so you got to remember that those shows originally paid them even less than that, right?
Yeah.
So the first time that anyone does reality TV, right? You can remember, right? When you get plucked from obscurity to do Real World, that's essentially why and when these people are going to do Survivor and Big Brother. For them, it's been a lifelong dream, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, those shows kind of they kind of cut them off. Like Survivor, if you've debuted on Survivor since season 38, you haven't even had a second chance to play that game. The challenge comes calling, they go, hey, we'll give you another chance to do TV. It's either this
Yeah.
or, personal training or whatever else you're doing. So to them, I find the money insulting even from afar, but to them, it's kind of, maybe I should do this. And to be honest with you, what's interesting about, like you saying, people getting more or less, whatever, as you know, there is a pay scale that is directly correlated to, for the most part, how many
It's
seasons you've done.
bullshit.
It's kind of,
No, there's
yeah.
no pay scale on people. Some are better than others. I'm sorry.
Well, and that's how other shows, let me ask you, I mean, without saying too much though, other
They
shows,
didn't pay us the same on the Traitors.
different people got paid different things.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what's funny about that is that is probably the case with certain people. I'm not going to name names, Johnny Bananas. I'm not going to name names, CT. But like what I'm saying is that it is not the case with everyone on the challenge. The way that they kind of skirt around that is they say that there is a how many seasons you've done kind of thing. which is why when everyone bangs their head on the table and goes, why do you do this season 39 with all people who have done 2 or 3 seasons or less? And it's like, well, because they can go, that's why you're getting this. You've only done 2, 3 seasons or less.
I don't
And
care because you
yeah.
know what? I've done 30 episodes of The Real World, which was more than any other season got. And we did a number 2. And I have given a lot of my life to them for very little. And I mean, like, no money.
Well, here's
And
where they're
so
silly.
I'm
Because
sorry, but you should pay me more and don't forget it. Like,
every other industry works in this way, right? Okay,
yeah.
so we're making a movie. We really want Trishelle to play the poker dealer. Okay, well, we offered her this. Well, she says she'll only do it for this. Every other industry, movie, music, then goes to a meeting where they go, okay, well, we really want her. Let's give her that. The challenge is the only, and other reality shows are the only ones that are in the Stone Age in that they just go, well, we can't, sorry. They call Landon every season. Every single person on the internet is begging for them to have Landon back, right?
Landon's a good character.
The value in having Landon back, I'm telling you, is worth biting the bullet, giving him whatever he's asking, having him sign an NDA, say, do me a favor, don't tell Big Easy that you got this. Just say you got whatever he got. Fine. Yeah. He takes it to the grave. You get him, and everybody's better for it, and more people watch it because he does the show. For whatever reason, they don't do it that way. These other shows, though, that are not operating in the Stone Age, your Traitors, your House of Villains, your celebrity reality shows, they operate differently, and they trust that you guys will understand that it's okay that some people might get more than others.
We do understand, because if you're a professional and you bring it for television and you know what good TV is, you want it to be this way, where I'm going to be doing a show with Phaedra. Like, I don't, Phaedra would never agree to do it for whatever me and Bergie and who else from Big Brother got. That's just not how it works. But I want to do a show with Phaedra, so I am happy to let her have more money or whatever. I'm happy for it. And it's just, unfortunately, I think that's why the challenge is not going to be lasting much longer, because no one cares about these people anymore. Well, they're not getting good cast members.
I feel like, I mean, I know this is true, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Like, how much you've benefited from just this experience, not even just having one. So like, even take how you felt 6 weeks in, right? 6 episodes in. And I know you had probably like a bit, and I'm going to ask you obviously about the early stuff with Peppermint and this and that and getting a little bit of backlash, but taking that out of it, even just feeling how much you were back in the public eye, the public zeitgeist, playing a game, being on the same pedestal as all these other reality greats that I know you love and you've watched on their season and things like that. I mean, how much do you feel like, money aside, that you just got from this experience, that the fact that they made it easy for you to say yes has benefited you after the fact?
Huge. Number one, just the production company itself was so incredible to work with. I mean, they treated us like humans. I mean, I remember just thanking them for wetsuits whenever we were in freezing cold water, and they were like, well, yeah, obviously. And I'm like, we just didn't get this on the challenge. They just want you to be miserable. And it was people from the UK, and they were just like, I don't understand. How would they think that these cast members are going to respect them if they treat you like this? And I'm like, exactly. And then one of the people was like, said that they had an interview with the production company in LA. And I was like, you're going to see a big change. It's going to be a lot different. But yeah, so I just, in that aspect of it, the production, everything, the production value, I felt so cool. But I had this sense of, wow, this is like a huge show. Back when I did The Real World, like my first MTV show, which I know I'm like crapping on the challenge because this is something that they can change that they refuse to. So that's why I think it's crappy. But the first show that I did, The Real World, that was huge. And I didn't mind getting paid absolute crap for it because it gave me such a huge experience. And after, I was able to do so much, and I was able to do things for myself. And so I feel like that about the Traitors. It's going to open up a lot of doors, and it already is.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a thing. Like it's like, so for me, like people are always like, are you going to cover this? Are you going to cover that? Like the challenge a year ago expanded into these 4 international seasons. They did a UK season, an Australia season, an Argentina season. And people are like, are you going to cover them? And I was like, and like, there wasn't really something in me that wanted to, but if I got the feeling that people really needed it, I would have done it. Right.
Do people care? Is it like doing well?
And the thing is, no, neither of those things happened. I didn't want to, I didn't feel inclined, and nobody made me feel inclined. Whereas the Traitors, it was twofold. One, my wife and I would have watched it anyway. Right. She watched season 1. She loved it. I loved, and I said this on the last podcast I did, even if it wasn't, say, you CT, and Johnny. Let's say it was, let's say it wasn't even you guys at all, right? Let's say it was the cast we got, and then it was, I don't know, Devon and I don't know, who's another name from Survivor. Devon and
Boston Rob.
yeah, Boston Rob and whoever. Even that, knowing that it's a very like fine-tuned game where I can think about the gameplay, the decisions are made, whatever, that there are people I recognize, and that the delivery system is both easy. It goes down smooth, especially dropping 3 episodes at once, no commercials. I, for one, am someone who loves stuff being on streaming. I know that like people who don't like to spend money or people who are sort of not with the times can't stand it. But like, so I would have watched it anyway. However, even if I didn't, let me just tell you that like by episode 4, 5, 6, I would have been like, oh no, I have to start watching this. Now I'm annoyed I'm behind the curve because it was clearly what everyone was watching and talking about it. Part of that is, again, people weren't interested in the challenge at the time. Survivor was off the air. Big Brother was off the air. It was the perfect dose of medicine for all these fan bases. And it didn't, in my opinion, what it does so brilliantly is it doesn't insult any of those fan bases. And it doesn't try too much, right? It's so like on the nose about how campy it is, and with Alan Cumming at the core, which we'll talk about him because I think he should be nominated for an Emmy for reality host. It's almost unfair. It's almost unfair because he is just in actuality an Emmy caliber actor who is doing these reads like the way you would like read on a stage or in like a movie or something like that. And it just works, and it only works because the show doesn't take itself that seriously. It trusts that us as audiences won't take it that seriously. Because if TJ Lavin tried that, or like when Jeff Probst does unintentionally get that dramatic, like we call him on it. We think it's awkward.
I mean, honestly, it was also such a difference doing this show than the challenge because Alan did everything in one take. He rarely had to repeat everything. And like, as you know, on the challenge, it's a little different.
Well, it's the opposite. It's literally,
Alan's an actual professional. He's an actual host.
To give TJ some grace, it's like TJ was a bike ride. He was a BMX X Game professional athlete who got turned into a host because at the time they were casting hosts because they were like somehow more extreme than the stuff people were doing on the challenge. So it'd be like, who should we get to host this? I don't know, someone who does crazy shit in their real life. But these are people who, because they do crazy shit and are sponsored by Monster Energy Drink and Mountain Dew, don't memorize lines. They probably don't even read that much. Alan Cumming is like a Shakespearean trained actor who, you mentioned doing it in one take. It's like, he was Nightcrawler in X-Men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now he's like throwing pictures on the ground, telling you who got voted out of a silly reality show. Do you have any idea why? So obviously, I'm sure financially, I've never gotten the pleasure of talking to him. I know he's probably done interviews and maybe said this, but do you know why initially he said yes to doing this? Because I'd imagine he has an agent or a manager who may have thought at one point it was beneath him, but like it is so perfect for him. Is he a fan of reality? What made him connect with this?
I'm not exactly sure what made him, but I mean, I think he probably just knew people in the production company because he's from that area. So I'm assuming. I never asked him that. That's a really good question though.
Yeah, because I mean, like to me, he is like, and in the nicest way, he is so overqualified, but like he leans into that, right? Like it's not like when you see like Jamie Foxx hosting like Beat Shazam on Fox and you're like, ooh, how much money does he owe to the government? Or does he have a gambling debt or something? Or like, I mean, come on, like you just won an Oscar and now you're hosting a silly show that almost has nothing to do with you outside that you're kind of a singer. Whereas like with Alan Cumming, it's like, he's so perfect with that, with the wardrobe and the delivering of the corny lines and the fact that he does it all like with one eye with a wink and with the other eye with like, no, I'm not winking. I'm taking this 100% seriously. It is chef's kiss.
I think it's like a fun for him because he is so theatrical. This whole thing is, like you said earlier, camp. And so that's what I love so much about it. But kind of like I can tell whenever Jeff Probst is doing like Survivor and Julie Chen is doing Big Brother, that they're also fans of the show. And I think that so is Alan. He likes people's gameplay. He's done interviews since, and he's talked a lot about our gameplay and everything. And so he's with it. He's paying attention and he's a fan of the people and follows what's going on in the castle. So I think that's what makes it important too.
How involved is Andy Cohen in all this? Because I know you guys have always been close. There's always been rumblings of like this maybe New Orleans Housewives season coming out and you being on that and this, that. And like you could tell like he loves it so much. Obviously, he hosts the reunions and things like that. I know
Right.
he's involved as an executive producer on so many shows that like so many people just know him as host Andy Cohen, but he is
Yeah.
like directly responsible in the same way that like Ryan Seacrest also, a lot of people only know as like the guy who holds the mic or does the radio shows. Both of those guys behind the scenes are like as responsible for 40% of all reality TV that anyone's ever seen. And yet they kind of decide to not lean into that as much as the host stuff, which I think is both
Mhm.
admirable, but I think also confuses people. How involved is he in the show?
Well, Andy's always been doing executive producing and everything on reality TV. I met him in 2005 when I was doing Celebrity Poker Showdown, and he was, I believe, an EP in that. So like he's always been gossipy. I remember in 2006 we were doing something, and he's like, "So is Mike the Miz? Who's he dating?" And I was just like, "Oh, we used to date." And he was like, "Oh my god!" Like Andy's always been into the gossip, and so it was very like when he did Watch What Happens Live, I was like, yeah, this is like his dream job because he loves to watch reality TV. He'd be doing this even if he didn't host a show. And so he's just involved, I think, in the way that Peacock and Bravo are together. But I remember in the castle, there's this huge painting whenever you were going into breakfast, whenever you learned that you didn't get murdered. And it was of Andy Cohen in like this castle outfit. And every morning I'd wait to him and blow him a kiss whenever I'd make it to breakfast.
Yeah, he
Andy's just
kind of
the daddy of everything.
No, I mean, he's great. He's a really good time. It's funny. It's like you see him doing the New Year's thing, getting a little too drunk. Like
I love it.
I think that's what he always gets a little flack for that, but I love that. I think that's what people can relate to him on and things like that. So it's funny that he, as you mentioned, is just this gossip queen at
He
heart, but
loves it.
also has risen to the ranks where he's the guy standing next to Anderson Cooper, ringing us into the new year. So he kind of put you on the spot at the reunion, asking you about UNCT, saying, "Oh, is
Oh
a
my
rom com? Is anything
God.
going on with you two?" I mean, and then like at the
I was
end,
like sweating.
so I mean that's him, right? Like that's what you're gonna get, right?
Yes. I'm like, wait, did something happen? What is happening right now? No, and he like mentioned it again at commercial break. And he mentioned it on the reunion too. He was like, it was like a rom-com. Adam, I think it's so weird. I asked a couple of my friends, did you guys get that vibe from CT and I? And they were like, not really. But did you get that vibe?
Here's what I'll say. I did not get the vibe from the two of you specifically. The thing that went through my head at the end was, are these two so happy that they go and celebrate and have a few too many? That's what went through my head. Just
We
knowing you
didn't.
two. No, but it
We
wasn't.
did not.
But here's what I think I don't have it in front of me, but what's crazy is that I think my most viral in quotes tweet or the most liked tweet of all time was like 2 weeks ago. I just posted a shot of CT and I just said, wow, CT is so charming on the Traitors, it's insane. And that's coming from me, someone who has spent a little bit of time with CT, especially in the last year or so.
Yeah.
Not to say he's not charming, and not to say he's not charming on the challenge or wasn't charming on especially the real world, but it's this different thing he hit this season of Traitors that I think, again, people shipping him and Phaedra,
Yeah.
wondering between you and he turned it on to a degree where I was blown away that he batted 1,000 the entire season. Did you? I mean, because I know you guys obviously you kept going back to your 20-year history together, but I know you guys don't spend a lot of time together often anymore. I mean, what was this version of
Well,
CT like for you?
now we're very close.
Now, right.
And so another missed opportunity by the challenge because this would have been a time for me and CT to go from that to do a challenge together right after the Traitors. And we went through this whole emotional thing together to see how that would translate on an MTV show. They are missing the mark on so many different things. Like, I know that someone's gonna see this. Good. Wake up.
Well, you know who's going to call is like, it's funny. It's the same arm. They own both shows, but you know who's going to call is like Amazing Race is going to call you guys and be like, would you want to do Amazing Race together?
I
You know?
might. And you know what? I heard that they don't pay well either, but I might do it just to get myself out because I guarantee you that they would not hold me to some crazy, insane exclusivity contract.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I think that there needs to be
But
change.
like for instance, like the last, like who was I forget the last time you and CT did a season together or maybe interacted. Obviously, I know you guys do appearances and things like that. What was this the first time that you had met or interacted with, post-divorce CT,
Yeah.
CT now well into his 40s, but also
Yes.
just like, to me, I mean, I couldn't believe. Now, granted, CT has won, I believe, 3 out of the last 4 or 5 challenges he's done. He has, because he's now playing mainly with younger people, fallen into this pops role where it, like, he has settled down. Obviously, he's been more of a mentor to these kids and things like that. But the fact that he then goes on a show with housewives and Michael Jordan's son and his wife or girlfriend and like people he's never met, John from the fact that he was getting along so swimmingly with a guy from the parliament and it looked like they were poker buddies for 30 years. Like, I couldn't believe how well he just plugged into this universe. Did that surprise you as much as it surprised me?
Yes and no. It did, because I was still in the beginning thinking of old school CT, right? Hothead, all this other stuff. But quite quickly in the castle, I think that he and I had some 101 because I just wanted to see where his head was at, right? I'm like, what is going on here? Johnny Bananas is gone. Now it's just me and CT representing from MTV. So I just wanted to like take his temperature, and we had the best conversation. And I was like, wow, I'm just like loving this guy so much. Like, he is just so charming and so just grown up, and complete 180 from the person that I knew in the best way possible. Not that he was bad before. We were just all young. We all were. We were young and stupid. And so everybody deserves the grace to mature and get better. And so I saw a lot of that from him. But as far as him getting along with everyone, CT has a completely new fan base right now, right? Like, I'm seeing him on the Bravo gossip websites. Like, women are talking about him that he never had
Castle
before.
Daddy, I believe,
Castle
right?
Daddy. And he completely deserves that, because he was just himself and everyone loved him for it. And I think that's why I don't know, he deserves all the flowers. I see him going more mainstream after this.
Well, it's funny because I mean he's branched into acting a little bit, things like that. I think I've said that the reason CT has won, I believe the Ringer did a bracket. It was like a March Madness bracket style thing, and it wasn't just reality competition. It certainly wasn't just MTV. It had like Snooki and Gordon Ramsay, and it was the best reality person of all time, and he, I think, won it. And
Really? That's
yeah,
amazing.
and and this is even before Traitors, part of the reason I think he connects with people is that he comes from back when, again, you mentioned hothead, got into some fights, obviously hooked up with a lot of women, things like that, things that earned you street cred back in the day, right? But that don't fly as much today. For whatever reason, obviously his relationship with Diem, he has this pivot point where he's kind of given carte blanche. He's allowed to now move into this new generation of reality TV and voyeurism, and he's nailed this act perfectly. But he still has that place in our heads and hearts of being that cool badass 10, 20 years ago. And so he services both fan bases. The dudes love him. Oh, yeah, bite off his head, need it. Oh, bananas backpack. Oh, you're from Boston. I love you. And then also, if you're just discovering him today, or you discovered him during him and Diem's relationship, or you just think he's hot, women love him too. And that's such a weird line to tread. And it's almost impossible today, because to get that street cred today, you would be kicked off the show you were on or not cast initially. So
I
that's
think
my theory.
that every girl in the castle almost, because not me, but had like a tiny crush on CT. And it's like, just because like we have this very brother sister relationship, like I was just like, whatever, I'm like a sister, and that would be gross to us. But yeah, so I see it though, but all the middle-aged women go nuts over him. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I mean, no offense to him or myself. I too am middle-aged now. He is middle-aged. So it's like you have so many people who grew
Oh, I
up
guess we
with him.
are
Yeah,
we?
right. Yeah. So it's like, so it almost makes sense. And he, to me, I got to ask this question here because it applies perfectly. So we got a question from Tara who wants to know, Trishelle, do you think Johnny's murder did a lot to clear you and CT as faithfuls, at least initially before there started being recruitments and things like that? Because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are kind of lumped into this challenge group, or at least gamesmanship group,
Yeah.
things like that. And obviously everyone looks at you guys as allies and friends. So when Dan comes in and clips Johnny from Jump Street, does that make people think, well, it couldn't have been Chris, it could have been Trishelle who did that?
Tara, that's a really good question, because they did not show this for some reason a lot, but in the beginning, a lot of people, including Peter, my ally, thought that CT was a traitor. And I had to be like, no, you guys, he's really not. And I think a couple people mentioned it, and CT was starting to get real pissed, right? He was starting to be like CT a little bit. I was like, listen, you got to freaking calm down, because if you lose your shit on these people over here, it's not going to be good for you. Just like remain calm. Just let me like talk to people. So I was going around like in the castle to everyone. I was like, no, why would CT ever be like throw his ally out on the very first day? How stupid. I was like, gameplay wise, like Johnny, we would have drugged Johnny to the middle and then voted him out, or just like allowed him to get himself banished, which would have inevitably probably happened. But yeah, so they did. I think it did clear CT up for sure.
While we're at the front of the game, we'll try to work laterally here or linearly here. So what do you think about, like, did you guys get clued in on the process of how they decided who would be a traitor? I know we see that scene of like Alan sitting down with all you guys and asking you, is that kind of ceremonial? Did your conversations with him, or were there conversations when they first called you for casting? Did that play a part? Because to me, I think it's such an interesting game in that it's not an even playing field for everybody, you know, and that's fine. Again, we put so much stock into watching these reality shows and complaining whether things are fair or not. And like, guess what? For Johnny Bananas, it wasn't fair. He showed up, somebody pressed a button, left a note on his bed, and he's done, right? So, you know, and guess what? They could have equally decided to make him a traitor, and just by nature of being a traitor, he would have been around for 5-6 weeks. Even Dan, who played the worst traitor game ever, was around that long. So
yeah,
like how much do you know about the process for how they decided who were those first initial two?
So I recently saw an interview with the producers, and they said that Alan did all the interviews with us. Like, do you want to be a traitor? Do you want to be a faithful? They take that into consideration. They also did interviews with us before we even flew to the castle to see if we were going to be a good fit for a cast, right? And so they asked us a lot, why would we think we'd make a good traitor, blah, blah, blah. Then I didn't realize this, but the very first day, we had a whole day that we're all hanging out together. Oh, are you drinking a claw?
Yeah.
Damn, I should have gotten mine. I'm drinking water like a boar. Okay, anyway. So they had watched us all day long interacting with each other. And
without having decided.
Without having decided.
Wow.
And I was wondering, I was just like, I thought that they were just like wanted us to all be like, I'm from this show, which makes good television because we all had to like get backstories from everyone. But they were seeing how people interacted and what people said so that they could pick who is going to be the traitors. Wow. And I guess that makes sense because like everyone was obsessed with Phaedra. I was like, you are the person, and this is the truth, that I wanted to meet the most whenever coming into the castle. It was Phaedra. Everyone loved her. Everyone was just obsessed with her. Dan kind of holding back a little bit. Wasn't really like interacting that much. Parvati, sweet as can be, you know, talking to people, but still they picked her. But Dan and Phaedra, I think that's why they got chosen. Two different ways of approaching being a traitor.
So, for instance, when you were called initially for the show, it was presented to you that, hey, you might be a faithful, you might be a traitor. We don't even know what you would be. Yep. That's kind of still in the cards when you come. And you kind of, and I know you can't speak for everybody, but everyone essentially had to sign on knowing that they could have been either.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And you know what's interesting is that John, Parliament John, said that he didn't want to be a traitor, and that if he was going to like turn it down and go home. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, I would imagine it's weird because I mean, it's so funny. It's like I was just watching this Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix, and one of his first big movies is Terminator, where he's the bad guy and he's murdering everyone in the movie. And then in Terminator 2, apparently he like goes to James Cameron. He's like, I want to be the good guy this time. I don't want to kill anybody. I'll shoot them in the leg, but I have to be the good guy. And someone says, I forget who it is, they go, that's when I thought, hey, he's going to run for Senate or something someday, and he doesn't want to be out there killing people in these movies anymore, whatever.
Wow.
And he does eventually run for governor and things like that. And I never thought of it that way because I always like thought of him as killing bad guys in movies and what's the matter in their movies and who cares. But I wonder for a guy like John, I don't know how consistent his political career is. Like, I don't know if he's just retired or whatnot, but he's done. But like, so I don't know if he just like doesn't want, you know, to be associated with being a quote unquote traitor on paper, even though he's on a show called Traitors. So if you Google John and his last name in Traitors, it still comes up. But so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe that is it.
He said it was more that people thought that he was a traitor because he was a politician. He wasn't particularly liked. And so that he wanted to play a different role in his life.
Mm. How much? So I always wonder on shows, like for instance on the challenge, they're always trying to get. They're sitting around the house, they're bored, they have nothing to do, so they're
Mm.
always trying to guess twists. They're always trying to guess people who are going to come in. They're always trying to guess stuff, but they cut that all out of the show, obviously. How much were you guys ever talking about the logic of who they would choose to be traitors? And if so, was that just removed, or were you coached not to talk about that kind of stuff? Because that would be one of the first cases I would make, is trying to get behind the psychology of who they would choose and why.
Scott, you and I are a lot alike because I did a lot of that stuff and I don't think a lot of people did. And I would be like, I forget who I was talking to. Oh, I think some of the Peter pals, they were not a little bit on the same thinking as me, as I was, except maybe Peter. But I was like, I wonder if I were a producer, I would pick Dan, I think. And they were like, yeah, maybe, maybe not. It's too obvious. And I'm like, no, it'd be like almost like a double bluff. And then I was just like, I think that Phaedra would be a good, like, I had people in my mind I thought would make good traders. I also thought Peppermint would make a good trader as well because she was well liked. And I just think that personality wise, like it would be unassuming. Um, and so, and also like killer outfits and stuff, like she would have been great. So there were just some people I kind of, and I found myself trying like self-producing almost. And then there was like a lot of times that I was just like, well, I know the traders stay up later than we do because they're making their murders at night and the turret. And so it's like, I wonder if we could tell if people look like, well, not well rested. There were just like certain things, but they didn't show us talking about that.
Well, one of my wife would always say this, is that she would always read into the psychology of the order that people entered the breakfast, because it would always kind of come to, because they would always, and I think they did a good job of this, but it's almost like still analyzing them trying to do a good job of sprinkling the traders throughout. So it's not obvious, they're not front loaded, they're not back ended, this and that. And they always try to end on the people that you guys are all collectively are assuming would maybe be sent home, probably the people that the traders were deciding between. And then they always kind of throw in like one trader there in the end or whatever. And my wife, I forget what it was exactly, but Lindsay had some sort of idea about how, where like the second to last person from the last time, they're not a traitor because they were maybe almost sent home.
Talked about. Yeah, they were talked about in the turret. And you know what? I noticed that on season 1 and I took into consideration that on my season. And I was like, okay, I knew whenever I was like the last 2 people in breakfast that I had been talked about by the traitors for murder. And I knew to dial up my vocalness at the round table, and people that I thought was a traitor, I was going to make it really difficult for them to murder me the next time. I was going to be like, oh, if I get murdered, it's because you're a traitor. So I started saying stuff like that out in the open to kind of protect myself from a murder the next time. And then I knew to gun for shields too whenever I was like the last person in.
So, like, for instance, if you were to say something like that, which to me is like smart, but it's also kind of reading into the semantics and the mechanics of the game, like, is that something that obviously you can't erase it from having said it so people can listen to you and take it into account? But do you get the feeling that's the kind of thing that they remove from the edit because it does sort of let behind the curtain, not flaws in the game, but things that do kind of, these shows never like to overplay their hand of like things you're able to read into that are kind of ceremonial, and where you're like, well, I saw them get asked for an interview then, and that's probably when they would interview somebody who is this, things like that.
But I do. They did leave a lot of that out because we did talk about it. I forget if it was CT or Peter I was speaking with us about, but I told them like, I'm going to start calling out like, Phaedra or whoever, because I knew that Dan called her out as a traitor and she was a traitor. And so the more I call her out in front of everyone, the less likely she's going to be to murder me, because then you have all the other people that are going to be like, that's what Trishelle got murdered. She must have been right.
All right, let's talk about the peppermint thing. I know you've talked about it a ton. You talked about it at the reunion. Yeah. I heard you speak about it actually on a podcast where you said that, obviously the lasting effect it had on your game and your clout as like a sort of predictor of things. Lindsay and I are sitting there on the couch. Everything you said after that was so dead on. And we're like, why aren't they listening to Trishelle? And then I heard you on a podcast saying, well, it's because I was so wrong about peppermint, So obviously that affected your game in a negative way. Obviously you turn on social media after episode 1. You couldn't have loved seeing that. I've seen you now talk about wanting to get unconscious bias training, things like that. So, I'll ask this question from John. John wants to know, what is the biggest lesson you took away from the peppermint situation?
Hey, John. Thank you for that question. I think the biggest lesson is that I was going into this show really guns blazing. Everyone's my competition, even Johnny and CT. And I was failing to kind of like really get to know people, see people for who they are. And kind of like, I didn't realize, I mean, I kind of knew that Peppermint, everyone had reasons to be there. But whenever Peppermint stood up and said she was a faithful and that she had this platform that she wanted people to see, you know, a Black transgender woman on a television show like this, it would be huge. And I just like lost it. And I was crying for like an hour and a half after. And I think that in the future, when I do shows, I'm going to really take into consideration the person more than just the game. Cause like it was too early to start playing the game. And I had said this earlier, had I gotten to know Peppermint a little bit better, she and I would have been allies for sure. Because she's the kind of person I love in my everyday life. And so yeah, there was like no reason for us not to be allies. And that's on me. That's my fault. And so I think that I would just like, we'll take a step back the next time I do a show.
Well said. Well, sorry to be that 900th person to ask you about
That's
that. Yeah.
okay. Not a lot of people ask that in that way. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I know personally we're talking to you, and then also just like again, I was there trying to stick up for you on social media because I do know, and I will say in the show's defense, the show has to pick and choose what they're showing because obviously the end result is you were wrong about her being a traitor.
Yeah.
Whether you were wrong to think she was or be, whether you thought she was because of something she said, which is what they kind of made it about, or even if you were just as a game player thinking of the psychology of like, well, nobody would want to, say that Peppermint's a traitor. So maybe they made her a traitor, whatever the reason is. I don't necessarily think you're wrong to ever have had that assumption, but you were literally wrong that she was one. So the way they have to show us as viewers that is by only showing us certain things. And by doing that, they obviously set you up for a lot of scrutiny, of which you got a ton of, and people digging back into old clips from the challenge at Riverwood and whatnot. And I just thought it was such a unfair shake for you. And I know you don't want to say that, so I want to say it on your behalf. So I think you handled it so gracefully and continued to.
But you know what? I also am the kind of person that takes into consideration what people say. I'm not the kind of person that's just like, no, like just constantly going to defend myself. Like, no, no, no. Like I will eventually be like, okay, so if enough people are saying this one thing, then it's my responsibility to take a look at myself and see if there's something going on here, which is why I'm going to do the unconscious bias training. Sorry, I have a cold. Which I'm going to do the training because I want to make sure that there's nothing inside of me that exists like that, right? And if it does, then we'll eradicate that, and if it does not, then we'll see. But I have a lot of questions that I want to ask someone. That's why I have an actual coach. I'm not just taking like an online class.
Well, also, I would love to know, because I think it's so funny how, I've like talked to Sarah Rice about this, how there are like regular therapists, but then like I went to see a therapist, and like half of my things I'd want to talk about, I'd spend the whole session explaining to him like what a DM was or like what a podcast was. Like they don't understand these new media, new age things that are now the like, it used to be like, I was at the carnival and a girl yelled at me, see, and what do? I feel bad. And so with the unconscious bias training, I think that it's so interesting where obviously there's normal workplace unconscious bias, there's relationship stuff, and then you are literally on a show where you're trying to figure out who is, metaphorically murdering people in the night. And they are not that person because they were raised to be that person. They were randomly decided to be that person. And obviously, I think you have learned so much from being wrong about that and the way people reacted to that, what you said about and wrongfully accusing Peppermint early on in the game. But later in the game, I watched people on social media be mad at people for being right that Phaedra was a traitor. And I would say, and then later in the game, within the game, I saw her friends in the game looking at the camera and going, I don't want to believe Phaedra is a traitor. And I would be yelling at my screen like, you're not saying Phaedra is a bad person. She decided to murder these people in the night. Like we're trying to read through context clues to decide who the producers decided was this like villain of the game or backstabber of the game. So I do think like when it comes to whether it's bias training or therapy and all this stuff, reality competition shows are a whole nother beast. Like there is kind of a difference between like, being mean to someone in an office or bullying someone on a team or in school or whatever, or when unconscious bias makes you wrong about a person in general. But when you're trying to like make game assumptions in a game that everything, some of it at least, is randomly selected, I do feel like, and I'm not like trying to cue you up to like let yourself off the hook or anything like that. Just in general, though, I did find the viewers of this show, some of them getting caught up between like, well, my favorite person has
Yeah.
this role in the game, and so I'm rooting for them to succeed. And anyone
Yeah.
who's getting in the way of that, I'm mad at what they're doing, and I'm going to call it bias or racism or sexism or whatever, just because that fits the narrative of me wanting my person to win. And that's just not fair to you guys who are allowing us to watch you and evaluate you playing this game. That is not fair. They're choosing 2 to 5 of you to be, to have your own special rules, and they're making you guys go out on a limb and just try to guess who they are. So
Yeah.
a little grace is needed, I think.
To that degree, I exactly saw what you were saying, like about Phaedra, is because like she had a lot of fans, right? And so like a lot of people were saying that I was going after her because I was racist. No, I was going after her because Dan said her name, and I knew that Dan wouldn't, because I've watched so much tape on Dan. I've watched one of his seasons twice. I did research before this show. I was being strategic in this. And so I knew when he said her name that there was psychology behind it, that he wanted to exonerate himself. And had he stayed, it would have, whenever she said she was a traitor, it would have exonerated him from being a traitor for at least a couple weeks. So I knew that that's what it was. So no, but I think the Peppermint situation was a little bit different because, and I do understand why people called it maybe like an unconscious bias, because there was really not much to go on. And so I was thinking to myself, why did I think that about her? So that's something that I would like to figure out, actually. But with Phaedra, that's a completely different situation. That actually was a strategic gameplay move, had nothing to do with Phaedra. Trust me, I wish she wasn't a traitor because I wanted her to stay the whole time. I was her biggest fan.
That was something she said at the reunion that I was surprised by, which again, this is stuff that I don't know if she was saying it in interviews or not. We certainly didn't get privy to that scene where you won her over, or those several scenes and those moments you guys had. I didn't even know you guys had a relationship at all. But then we find out she, if anybody, was your sort of traitor angel.
Yeah, right. And she was. We did have a lot of conversations, and I think that they just didn't show. It wasn't like gameplay conversations, just personal stuff. So a lot of it whenever the cameras weren't really filming. So yeah, but I did get along with Phaedra. I loved her.
Let's talk about Dan, and I want to use this as a segue into asking, because like you said, you're a student of the game. You went back, and I know you said you watched almost every season of the Traitors that there's been internationally and here stateside. You've watched all these other shows. So I know that you probably, while researching and now having played the game, like me, probably see maybe little holes and things that can be improved. To me, the fact that Dan was able to / motivated to do what he did at that point of the game, and Phaedra, who had played such a stealth game up to that point, and really the only thing, I know you mentioned, you said you had that long list of reasons, but you've now admitted you really didn't. You were just saying that so people would believe you, and the real reason was just that, guys, Dan did that, and he kind of ruined her game, torpedoed the whole thing. I'm sitting here, and although it's like, I don't fault him, because what I fault is there's nothing in the rules and there's nothing that benefits him to not doing that. And so I wonder, is there a way to tweak future seasons to incentivize traitors to want a traitor to win, even if it's not them? Where on the way out, they can if they want to. It's not against the rules to maybe try to divert to another traitor, but they do have to checks and balances go, but is that worth ruining Phaedra's game? Would I rather have Phaedra maybe win and then I get maybe 20% of the pot or something like that? Do you see room for improvement there? Because I do think it really does suck looking back on the season to say that Dan, in that one fell swoop, in an effort that was not going to save him at all, did kind of screw up the next wave of the game.
I think that he really believed it would save him. But the weird thing is he had just done so much damage to his own game by just not giving out any names. And I kept asking him, and he's like, whenever I say the name, that's going to be a traitor, and that's how it is. And I'm curious why, whenever he was going around telling people that in the house, why the producer didn't pull him aside and be like, you do realize that you can't just like give one name and the one name be a traitor. Like, that's kind of messed up. It's really kind of going against the integrity of the game. But I don't know, because you know what? I think because it wasn't against the rules. I think the producers are really hands off, to be honest. They really try to just let us do what we're going to do and make an interesting game. And some people have different strategies and let that play out.
And I don't think it can be, I think if you make that, to be honest with you, if you make it a hard, fast rule that he can't do what he did, then you guys or future players can just start reading into that because who didn't he mention? Okay, they must be a traitor.
So hard.
So I do think it has to be, I think you just have to make the decisions tougher. Like, another thing that I saw people wonder, because I'll be honest, as it got down to the nitty gritty of the game, I'm sitting here wondering, and maybe this is me giving you guys too much credit, but just by the way the game is incentivized, I'm sitting here going, well, if you guys have already figured this whole thing out, right? And hey, we're sitting here, Kate's the last traitor, okay? And we know from watching future seasons, this is how it's going to play out. We're going to have one more vote, then she's going to get to remove one person, but she's not going to want to be one of us because if it is, that's too obvious. She's probably going to send home Cherie. And then we get to go to the fire. When we go to the fire, we'll get rid of Kate, but then let's keep going until it's just the two of us, and then we split the money. You have said in interviews that isn't the case, but it doesn't change the fact that you could have done that. And for instance, the Sandra vote where CT obviously did screw up and you guys send home Sandra wrongfully does in essence work out for you. You end up getting to split with less people. You have one other traitor candidate out of there for the flame ceremony.
I know. I still was really mad about that. That's another reason that people aren't watching the same show, or they're just not really hearing, or they just only see what they want to see. Because if that were the case, why did I want to keep Sandra so bad? I was pissed at CT that he voted out Sandra instead of Kate. And then it would have been harder. I was trying to figure out who traitors were, and I did think CT was a traitor. But people don't.
But in essence, though, and now I'm happy that you got as much money as you did, and I'm not asking you to return any of it. But now, speaking objectively, you guys were wrong twice in a row. Well, not twice in a row. You were wrong, then right, then wrong, in that you were wrong about Sandra. She goes home. You're right about Kate. She goes home. But then you're wrong not to split it there. And you send MJ home, and the result is you guys each get more money for having been wrong. That to me is a logistical flaw, because I do think it should be baked into it where if you're wrong down the stretch, it should not make you guys get more money, because not only does it then open it up for people to be able to strategize and be wrong on purpose, but also in essence, you got sort of rewarded for being wrong. Is that
well? I think the whole thing is that just because you were chosen as a traitor doesn't mean that just because you're faithful doesn't mean you can't be a traitor in the end.
So that is another thing.
So the tagline of the show is betrayal, deceit, and it's not just the 4 people that were traitors.
So that's another thing I would say. Could it just be made more clear by Alan just to us as viewers? Because I don't think it is made clear that there is a secondary game at play, right? Because I think narratively they're telling us faithful are working together. You hear a lot of I'm a faithful through and through, and Peter made some decisions where I'm like, this guy genuinely thinks he plays for the faithful team. He's on the Baltimore Faithfuls or something. He's grew up watching it with his dad. Why does this guy give a shit, right? And so for me, I do think that as watching it again, I'm reading through the tea leaves. I'm like, no, there's sort of a secondary game here. Sandra spoke to it a little bit, which is you can know who the traitors are, but not take them out, because if you know it's somebody who likes you, you want them to be around to take other people out, your traitor angels, etc. Yeah. I just wonder, I heard more of that at the reunion. I've heard more of that sort of psychology on podcasts. I wonder if that could be said during the game more, and that could be more part of the game, because to be honest with you, I think it would add another layer to the excitement of not just being a traitor, but also being a faithful. Because to the average viewer who's kind of just taking the game at face value, you would go, well, these few people get to play this awesome diabolical game, and these other faithful just have to kind of sit back and play by the rules and this, that. But no, if there is sort of a savvy faithful game, we've seen obviously Cherie play the savvy traitor game in season 1. We see you and CT come out on top as faithful, and at times play a savvy faithful game, but it got a little clunky down there towards the end. We have yet to now, is the next level seeing the savvy faithful game where you guys in essence savagely take out Sandra and MJ along the way, knowing that mwahaha, we get more money? Or is there a way to incentivize having as many faithful as possible at the end?
But that would mean that we knew exactly who the traitors were, which we didn't. There was an element of Kate that I was just like, maybe she's not. And then there was an element of CT that I was like, maybe he is.
Oh no,
So
I know
there were
that.
MJ literally was the only person. I think MJ and Sheree were the only two people that I really felt comfortable from after Peter left that I knew were
not
the
traitors.
only.
So that's my point, right? So you knew MJ wasn't a traitor, and yet
Mhm.
she's the one who goes home at the end, and you're
But
better off.
that's her own doing.
Right.
It has nothing to do with me. And everybody listening, watch the show.
Yeah.
It would have been
100%.
way easier for me to just vote MJ out the first time if we were planning on doing that and not vote CT out and piss off millions of housewives that are in love with him. Like that would have been so much easier for me to do that. And also, I am not a dumb girl. I don't know if you've been watching, but I would never leave MJ to determine my own game in the end because I didn't know who she was going to vote for. I mean, to me, that's just common sense. But
what if any tweaks would you make to the game? Is there anything that you would adjust going forward, whether you're playing or not?
Peter said this the other day, and I thought that was really smart. He thinks that maybe there should be an element of luck on who the traitors are. Like the producers don't pick it. It could be a Bergie or it could be a Kevin. It could be anyone. And that way people aren't doing like I did and kind of self-producing and being like, oh, who would I choose? Because like, I mean, I just thought that it was kind of obvious, like Dan and Parvati, and then Phaedra would have been an awesome one. And I was just thinking about personality wise, who would be good.
Especially if you're going to especially if you're going to cut that out of the edit, right? If you're not going to credit you guys for having that reasoning, it is interesting. I wonder, could you do one producer decision, one random wheel draw, and then one traitor decision like they did? What did you think about the ability for the traitors to choose someone? Because that could have been you.
Yeah, I kind of like that because that way they have a little bit of how the game's going and they get to see. But I think that some of their decisions were bad. Actually, Parvati was probably a good decision if she had dialed it up. I think Sandra would have made an amazing traitor. She has it in her, and she was playing the game. She wasn't going to sit there and be quiet and freak out. Like she loves being a villain. And so that would have been great. Yeah.
Do you think Peter should have said yes to being a traitor?
No, but I think that they should have asked him again. If they asked him again, if he was going to have to be murdered and sent home, or he was forced to be a traitor, he would have picked being a traitor.
What do you think about Kate coming in as late as she came in? Like now, she obviously ends up becoming a traitor. That's pathway one, but she could have come in, been a faithful, and never gotten selected, and then you guys maybe would have thought, well, she just came in late. She can't possibly be a traitor. Like,
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Do you think it's fair to have someone come into a game this late?
I liked having her come in, to be honest, because I like Kate, number one. I'm a fan of hers, but also I thought that it was a good element of having someone from another season that we could ask questions to, which we did. Whenever she came in, we didn't know that there was a hidden room in the bar. That hidden room with like the treasure chest that people were kind of talking in a little bit. We didn't even know that. She's the one who showed. She's like, oh, did you find the hidden door? We're like, what? Like, this is why you're here. Show us. And I wish that they would have made more of that. But they weren't using the hidden room this season. So that was cool. And also, I think that it changed up the dynamic a little bit. And at that point, it was getting a little stale. We hadn't gotten anyone out. Then the day that Kate came, we got our first traitor, Dan.
Okay. This is a question about future seasons. Shannon says, Trishelle, know you're a big Bravo fan. Who from Bravo would you like to see on a future season of The Traitors?
I would love to see Karen Huger. I think that she's like hilarious. I think that Dorinda would be good for Housewives.
For the layman's, and especially for me, what shows are these people on?
Okay, Karen is, they call her the grande dame of the Real Housewives of Potomac. She's just like very fabulous. She would come with like fur in the castle, and she's just a really big personality. Dorinda, she's was Real Housewives of New York. So she would be really good. She just gets kind of drunk and says crazy stuff. Kenya Moore, Real Housewives of Atlanta, she can be real mean. She would be a really good traitor, or she'd just be like amazing at the round table. She would just like be going at people. I think Paige.
I've got a wild card.
Well, who?
What about Andy Cohen?
Oh, he wouldn't do it. He's too involved. You don't
think he could take a few weeks off and do it? It's essentially a celebrity show. I mean, I think he would be.
I don't know. I think Paige and Craig would be good as a team, kind of like Marcus and Lars that came in as like a couple. I would like to see Paige and Craig from
And what are
Summer
they from?
House. Paige is on Summer House, Craig is on Southern Charm, and they're dating.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
There's
now
just like, yeah.
here's the MTV version of this question. Zachary wants to know, out of everyone you played with from the challenge, or maybe you didn't play with them per se, but people from the MTV universe, who do you believe would be good on Traitors season 3 or otherwise?
I think Anissa would be amazing because she's hilarious. She gives really good interviews. I think that Beth Stolarczyk would be awesome because she is a villain and she has like this crazy villainous laugh that would be like so good in the castle. And she just has no problem being a villain, which is great. um, who else? Coral would be good too. She's just always good television. And I think that, I don't know if Coral's not on 40, is she?
No.
I feel like they're not offering her enough money. See, and she needs to go do another show because I'm not done seeing Coral on television. She needs to go do another show and get away from the
She's
challenge.
also like she's not on anything. I don't think she's on, like, I haven't seen her do like show up at a a well photographed baby shower. Like
Yeah,
she's off the grid. Like even Alton, who had been off the grid for a while, Landon, like we've unearthed them. They've come to a
yeah.
challenge mania at least. Alton did season 1 of All Stars. Like Coral is like, and I know she's there, she exists, she's
She
DM'd with
would do
people.
it, but they don't pay, they don't offer her enough money. Like it's the same thing over and over. But also she's an amazing television personality, so she deserves to be on TV. So they should ask her to do the Traitors.
Couple questions about the challenges. Do you think that you were better at the challenges because of your past on MTV's The Challenge, from Rochelle?
Um, A little, but I mean, I won Fear Factor, so I've had that in me. And this is another thing. It's like if you are on a show where they give you a little bit of leeway and they treat you well, I will perform and I want to do better and I want to stay longer. So I think that's just I could probably win a challenge if they let me sleep in a bed and treated me like a human and paid
Right.
me. I mean, I could.
Here's a question about potentially improving on the challenges. Marissa says, do you have any thoughts on how the missions on Traitors could be more meaningful? Maybe it adds to the Traitor prize pot if the missions are sabotaged. Like, for instance, both sides playing the
Yeah.
game. Obviously, you guys are trying to add to your pot, which I have a theory about the prize pot. Like, there's no world in which at the end of one of these seasons they're going to be like, "Oh, you're playing for $41 million because you sucked so many times." Like I
Yeah.
feel like these challenges are what they are. But could there be a traitor incentive to these?
That's a really good like aspect of the game, Marissa. Okay, yeah, wow, I didn't even think about that. Because I have thought about a little bit of this as far as like whenever MJ and them quit the challenge that CT and I were in the tunnels getting poured bugs and like mud and slosh, and then they were just like, I don't want to do it anymore, and they were costing us money as we were making them
But
money.
it's their money. It's all the same money, right? It's
I
like,
know, but like,
yeah.
yeah, there should be like some penalty for faithfuls or incentives for the traders to do
Because a
that. That
trader
way,
now, the way it is, a trader would never sabotage a challenge because you're playing for the same pot, right? So, like in
right?
essence, they want you guys to do well. There's another show, I don't watch it, but I want to say it's The Mole. I feel like The Mole, the point is that during the challenges they're
Yeah,
sabotaging and stuff. So I wonder if I wonder if maybe, I mean, obviously there is the incentive for them to make sure certain people don't get the shield. I know you
mhm,
had maybe thought that the reason CT was a traitor is that he was so generous with the shield to you, thinking, oh,
yeah.
he gave it to me because he doesn't need it. So I do feel like there's a psychology we read into based on the missions and the dailies, but I do wonder, I agree with Marissa, is there a way to add another layer to it? It's possible.
Oh, also, we weren't sure because the first season they just gave them all the money at the end. They just hiked it up to 250 and that's what they won. But for us, you had to earn the money. So I think next season they're going to be like, "Oh damn, they didn't even get the whole full prize pot because some people quit and some people didn't even try and they screwed up a little bit." So, yeah, that's an interesting thing what she said though. I think that the producers should look at that. Very smart, Marissa.
Yeah, I'll just be honest. Like things like the money, the challenges, that like none of that stuff really matters to me. Like to me, it's just fun watching you guys play this game that is essentially Mafia. This game that we used
Yeah.
to play in our living rooms, and it's just
Yeah.
like a very high production value version of Mafia.
Mafia.
Um,
I figured
Last
that.
questions from Brian, and then I have one follow-up. Brian says, on Johnny Bananas' podcast, MJ said you previously tried to get her to vote CT out as a traitor. Is that true, and what were your reasons if so?
Yeah, right before we went to the fire pit and it was like 4 people left, I told her, I said, MJCT's working with Kate. Why else is Kate still here? We were all going to get rid of her at the round table. And then he switched the vote. And I was like, so weird. And why would he do that last minute? And so, yeah, no, she's correct. That's again, MJ fans that are saying that I purposefully did this. No, I legitimately at some point thought that CT was a traitor. But then when I saw the look on his face, I know that look, and I was like, oh, no, he's not.
There are rumors. I don't know why there are these rumors, but there's already rumors that Johnny Bananas might get invited back to play on a future season of the Traitors. It wouldn't be unheard of. We just saw Kate get invited back. Hypothetically, if a Johnny, who again has this sort of challenge pedigree to him, is Johnny and was voted out first, were to play again, what do you think is the correct way to insert him into the game? As a faithful, as a traitor, as sort of a mid-season drop like Kate? Because I do think that, returning players, you do again to put your like sort of keen eye on it. It's like you'd immediately start reading into what they would be doing with him. What do you think they should do with him, if anything?
Okay. I think that Johnny deserves to go back and play a full season. I was really pissed that he got murdered so quickly because you want to see a Johnny Bananas on television. He was already stirring the pot, starting trouble, pissing off Alan, like literally, and he was there for 24 hours. I wanted to see what other things Johnny was going to do over there in the castle. Like he's crazy, but I love it. I think that he probably will get asked again. But I think that they should just give him do the same thing, make him a faithful and see how he plays his game, and then maybe people will recruit him. But I think he'll be a good faithful.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would probably, if I'm the producers, I do make him a faithful. But if I'm in the game, my brain goes, why bring this guy back if there's a chance he gets voted out first again? So you got to put him in a scenario where he doesn't get voted out first again. Let's try, you know what I mean? Like, I think he might be a traitor, and or at least reading into the decision. And if I'm a traitor that season, I probably try to pick a person who Johnny would pick. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like everyone's eyes are going to be on him if he does come back and play again. So you will have.
I know, but I will be so pissed if they bring Johnny back and they vote him out again. Like, if anybody who's going to be doing the show is listening, please don't vote him out. He's good television. Like, make a show.
I've seen you, like, you just went to a Broadway show with Peter. I've seen, like, you guys have obviously gotten together several times to do press, do the reunions, things like that. Did you guys connect as a cast? Like, are you guys, like, obviously, this will always be Traitors season 2. Everybody has their own lives, their own shows, things like that. But do you guys feel like you really bonded from this, and this is like a new crew of people that you're going to be staying in touch with?
I 100% feel this way. Peter and I really bonded after the show too. I absolutely adore him. He's a pilot just like my husband, so we have a lot in common. Bergie and I really bonded. Janelle and I. Tamara's a friend of mine. I've talked to Sheree and Phaedra since, like, on Instagram and stuff. Who else? Like, even people from season 1, like Rachel Riley and Stephanie LaGrossa. I've talked to them, and Sari a little bit. But yeah, Sandra. Oh my God, this girl, she's so wild. She calls me and says the funniest stuff randomly. Love Sandra. Talk to Kate. We all feel really bonded. We loved our experience. And Ekin-Su, oh my God, yes.
And you are, like, obviously, like you said, you did a lot of research for the show, but you're a fan of a lot of these people just from watching their shows initially. How many people knew you and were a fan of you, or at least were aware of you going into this, would you say, among the entire cast?
A couple people knew of me. I'm pretty sure that I think maybe not the housewives, because I don't think that they really watched the challenge. Phaedra had no clue who CT was. She thought he was,
so it was like a driver or a mechanic, right?
Which is funny because I get it. I thought that John was a producer for an entire day that I was in a car with him. I didn't know he was cast.
To be fair, though, that's one where really, if you aren't watching like the British version of C-SPAN, why would you recognize him? Right?
Yeah, I did not know. But anyway, I think that Janelle knew who I was, like Sandra, Dan, people like that who played the games, but not anybody else.
Right. Well, I
Yeah.
know it was a thrill for you to get to know these people and now call them friends. It is a thrill for me to call you a friend because I
Yeah,
grew up
we
watching
are
you on TV.
friends.
I'm so excited to hang out with you in New York on April 10th, where we're going to be unleashing All Stars season 4 on the world. Trishelle, unfortunately, not on that season, but she's going to watch it alongside myself, Melinda Collins, and two people from the season, Nicole and Jay, here in New York. Then we've got Atlanta, which is, and who knows, maybe we can get some Real Housewives of Atlanta to come by and hang out with you. But
Yeah,
we've
for
got
sure.
Keefla, who's on All Stars season 4. He's going to be coming through. Hopefully, Ace is joining us, but you never know if Ace is going to show up or if he's going to be like building a well of magic or something in his lawn. And then we have, of course, Olivia, who I know you probably don't know well because you don't watch the show too often anymore, but Michelle, who I know you know from Survivor, Michelle Fitzgerald.
Yep.
Mark Long will be in the house. And then Portland, the aforementioned Anissa Ferreira, who you obviously have a long and illustrious
Yeah.
history with. Nerese and Kyland, who I know you know from Big Brother, will be there. Corey Lay as well, Mark Long as well. You can get tickets to all those at challengemania.live. And if that's not enough, Trishelle, for you, tell our audience what you're doing next year on this cruise, because people are
Oh
constantly
my
trying to get
God.
me to do a cruise. And I'm like, guys, how much money do you think I have? Like, there's no way I'll maybe go on a cruise and eat shrimp. I can't like throw a cruise for you guys, but someone is doing that. So tell everybody about this
Yes,
Traitors
it's
cruise.
gonna be so cool. All right, it's called the Cruise of Deception. So cruiseofdeception.com. And you can also look at my Instagram at Trishelle C. I have the link on my bio. And so they're doing basically teams of people. So Janelle has a team, Bergie has a team, Sandra, Rachel Riley from season 1, Stephanie from season 1. Possibly Sari maybe might be a late ad. I'm not exactly sure, but I just got added. So my team is not sold out yet, but you can be in on my team. It's sort of going to be like murder mystery slash trader games on the show. And
That's
look,
awesome.
I won the show, guys. We will get our notebooks out. We will freaking win. But the awesome thing is you could win a prize pool of $50,000.
And
So
is this
there's
a cruise
actual
like, does
money.
this go to like Dominican Republic, or is it just kind of go
Oh,
around,
yeah.
you play the games, and you come back? Where does it go?
No, it's actually going to be a week long. It starts April 27th,
Wow.
2025. So look, if you join now, you have to sign up because it's going to be selling out. It has been selling out with some people. So 2025, you can put a couple $100 down just to like reserve your room, and then I don't think you have to finish paying until January of 2025. So you have a long time. You have like almost a year. But anyway, so it's going to go to Haiti, Jamaica, and Bahamas, and this like island Coco Cay. So it's Royal Caribbean cruise, Oasis of the Seas, beautiful ship. I did this exact same cruise for fun last year.
Wow. So you get to
So
go on a cruise, which is awesome, even if you're just with your aunts and uncles and cousins. You get to go on a cruise with all you guys, reality
yeah,
all stars from the Traitors, other shows, whatnot. But then they're also going to be playing alongside you guys in murder mystery Traitor style games.
yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous. I'm super FOMO, and also I'm jealous of the concept and idea, and of all you guys who even just get to go. So
Come with us.
I would love to tell people again where to get tickets.
Look on my Instagram at Trishelle C. And the link is in my bio, or you can go to www.cruiseofdeception.com.
Awesome. Well, Trishelle, thank you for all your time
Thank
today.
you. I can't
We'll
wait to
see
see
you in a
you.
couple weeks. I will say, people have asked me this. I remained unspoiled the entire season of Traitors. Not only did I get to watch the whole thing, not having any idea what was happening, although I was constantly texting on the side, asking little kind of questions
You
about, like,
did.
is that really your bad? Things like that. But the day before the finale, someone who will remain nameless, Ryan Kehoe, said something to me that I thought ruined it for me, but that made me think you didn't win. We're driving back from Philly, and he said something to me that made me think, and I was like, no, I just said that. So I'm watching the finale thinking the only thing I know is that, well, Trishelle doesn't win. And I was so ecstatic to see that you and Christopher represented MTV, represented the
That's so
challenge, represented the
cool.
real world, and won. I was genuinely surprised. It was an amazing season.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Wait, can I say
Yeah.
something to the challenge fans? I
Yes.
want to say something. Honestly, the challenge fans, I appreciate y'all so much. You never know what you're going to get sometimes. If I don't do well in a challenge, you guys are like, you suck. But y'all had my back so hardcore on the Traitors. And I just appreciate all of you. I'm so grateful. I cannot wait to meet you guys in all the cities that we're going to. Ask me all the questions. We'll take shots. We're going to have fun. New York, Atlanta, and Portland. Drive out, fly out. It'll be awesome. But I love all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Trishelle, thank you so much, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. See ya.